Women in film have gotten a pretty bad shake. Women were some of the earliest directors and innovators in the scene, and yet also were some of the first to have their films lost to time and their impact belittled. I mean, think about it. Women make up as much of society as men do, and despite that, we're stuck with almost an entirely male field of directors, with barely any female characters at all. It's hard to feel like I, as a woman myself, have any agency in this industry at all. Luckily, it doesn't have to stay that way for long. There's been a recent uptick in female indie directors taking over the scene. Lynn Ramsey, Claire Denis, Olivia Wilde, Chloe Zhao, Lulu Wang, Marielle Heller, and biggest of them all, Greta Gerwig. Getting her start in the mumblecore scene in the mid-2000s, Gerwig's not only been building up her writing prowess as time has gone on, but also has been one of the most underrated actors of the indie scene in the past 20 years. But it wasn't her writing or her acting that got her biggest hit. It was her directorial debut that set the world on fire. Lady Bird. She instantly became the hottest director in all of Hollywood with her sly, funny, and unique coming-of-age flick that just touched a nerve for so many young women in today's world. She had the choice of any project she wanted. She could do anything. And she aimed big at one of the most defining pieces of literature ever written. Little Women. Easily one of the most influential books ever written. A classic. And with that comes a huge burden of expectation and adaptation. After all, it's already been adapted 5 times to the big screen, even more to the small screen, and has been an opera and a musical. To say the book casts a big shadow is an understatement. It's one of those classic American novels that has its own legacy that people respect and know inside and out, and has had people try in the past to capture it to varying degrees. It's a fool errand to even try to make this film. Luckily for us, fool's errand or not, Greta Gerwig did it anyway, and provided us with maybe the single best adaptation of the book ever made. It's new and uniquely beautiful in how it handles the subject matter, changing the structure completely, and yet still being able to capture the spirit and love for the original. It feels respectful, yet like its own original vision. I adore it. It's rare to see a film that so beautifully is able to discuss both coming of age and adolescence and the responsibilities of adulthood, and it does that by juxtaposing them right next to each other so we get a full spectrum of life. And the film helps further distinguish them through the nostalgic framing of the past mixed with a much more bitter, rough feeling to the present. There's warmth to the past that reminds you of warm nights by the fireplace and fun with your siblings, while adulthood has a coldness to it, reminding you of having to scrap for whatever you can. Directing here is phenomenal too. It's common for a lot of films exploring more rustic period settings to be shot a bit blandly, often extremely reminiscent of classic Hollywood, but extremely flat in practice. It's rare to find a good period piece type adaptation of classical literature that bothers to be fascinating in its looks. But Greta doesn't sacrifice any of her style here. Her usage of wides really sets her apart as you get a real sense of depth with her. There's often a lot more extremity to the wide to communicate a general emotional sense to everything. And adding more angles in this film only adds a new dimension to how she can communicate here. Her use of lighting too is fascinating, using more dark, shadowy coloring to the future segments, almost Rembrandt-like, and for the past using a smudgier orange tint that gives warmth to every shot. Not only setting the moods, but communicating a nostalgic quality with which we view our pasts. And the close-ups! Jesus Christ, the amount of emotion she gets out of them with just how they're framed, lit, and acted is something to be in awe of. Speaking of acting, the ensemble is brilliant. Emma Watson is solid, Meryl Streep doesn't have much of a major role, but when she's there, she sells it like a motherfucker. And Laura fucking Dern is fantastic, and she has one of the most powerful moments in cinema of last year. Really, with such a star-studded cast, you'd expect there'd be at least one weak link, but they all pull their weight immensely. But still, getting down to it, it really comes down to 3 names. Saoirse Ronan, Timothée Chalamet, and Florence Pugh, all of which deserve all of the props in the world. Timothée Chalamet pulls off his role with sort of boyish charm. He's just gentlemanly with an obvious rich fuckboy turn to it that's just so hard to pull off. It's a very specific mood to have, and yet he has it. He's able to win you over and have you begging to have his babies, and then next you want to slap the shit out of him. And never once does any of it feel false or misleading. It all feels honest and like it's coming from the same person. Florence Pugh is perfectly snotty as her younger, ruder self, an immature, flighty young woman with a bad habit of wanting to be the center of attention, to her much more matured, real self later on, when she realizes who she needs to be and how she needs to succeed in the world and be herself. And Saoirse Ronan! God! She is the perfect Jo March! Dedicated yet messy, boyish and intelligent, prickly yet kind, she is the ultimate big sister. Every moment with her on screen is just impressive as all hell. She is just the character in every way, from the way she talks to how she slumps, the way she breathes. Everything is just Jo March to the core. Really, this entire film is just something to behold, a true capturing of everything that made the original Little Women a classic. It doesn't pull its punches for emotional weight, and yet it feels hopeful and optimistic about the future despite its rough moments. It feels like an honest trek through life, a real journey of sorts that you've been along for. It has the most wholesome touch of a mother and the cold slap of a winter wind, all rolled into a beautiful package of emotional visual poetry, and all while making a beautiful statement on womanhood and the expectations and restrictions of it. And just like the original, I think this is another classic in the waiting. Greta Gerwig's Little Women gets a 9 out of 10.